Begin today the Gemara on Daf Tezvav Amid Beis, 4 lines up from the bottom of the Amid. So this continues from a point that was mentioned before, that one may not sell weapons to a guy because he can use it to kill. So there's a problem of lifnei iver, that you're causing a guy to do an Avoda. That's one reason that it says in Rishonim. Another reason is because he can actually hurt a Yid. It's dangerous to sell to a guy a weapon. So Tana Rabbana, we learned in the Braisa, Ein moichrin lahem trisen. You may not sell a guy a shield as well. But another opinion is moichrin lahem trisen. You may sell a shield because the shield is not a weapon that's made to kill, it's made to just protect the guy. So the Gemara explains the first opinion. My time, what would be the reason that you may not sell this shield? Is it because it protects the guy and we shouldn't be selling anything that the guy will use for his own protection? We're not interested in helping and protecting the guy. But if that's the case, then so maybe you shouldn't sell wheat, barley, food to the guy that will feed him and will give him life. So if you can't sell this, you shouldn't sell anything to the guy. So Rav answers, or another girsa here is that it's Rav Papa, I believe it is, yeah. So he explained that if it would be possible that you should not sell food, chitim, item to a guy, and there won't be any issues that this will cause. Rashi says, if it would be possible to do this, not to sell to a guy without causing any animosity, then it would be the right thing, but it's impossible. So therefore, food you can sell, but not the a trisin, not a shield, which will not cause this eva. So again, the words of the Gemara is, if it would be possible, hachanami. So then you're right, you shouldn't be selling food to a guy either. But since it's impossible, so you sell to a guy as well. That's one shot. Ikeda Amri, another reason why you shouldn't sell the shield to a guy, Trisen Haine Taime, the reason you shouldn't sell it, the lie, the Shalem Zinayu, because when they run out of the use of their weapons, so Kotle Begavayu, they could use this shield, which is also a heavy piece of metal, to use it as a weapon, to kill someone. The second opinion was that you could sell a shield to a guy. The reason is when they run out of bullets or weapons, so they just run away. They don't use their shields for as a weapon. So therefore, there's no problem to sell the trisin to a guy. We paskin like the yeshayimrim that a tris could be sold to a guy. Avoda Zara said, ashoshi is shel barzel. You can't sell blocks of iron to a guy. My time, mishum dechol shiminayo klizayin, because they cut it into pieces and they use it to make weapons out of it. So if that's the case, the issue should be not only to sell them a block of iron, to sell them a hoe or a axe should also be a problem. You can take that iron and form it into a weapon. Rav Zvid answers, the issue is only if you're using this iron that comes from Hoidu, Rashi says. It comes from India. It's a unique quality of iron that can be used to make weapons out of it. But otherwise, any metal or iron is not an issue to sell because they can't make weapons out of it. Now, the Gemara says that we see that we do sell these kind of iron and these things to a guy. What's the reason? Why aren't we concerned about what the Gemara said here, that we shouldn't sell weapons to a guy? So Rav Ashi says, Leparsoi, we're selling it to the Persians, that the Yidden lived amongst them. The Magni Lavan, they actually protected Yidden. They did not use these weapons negatively, they protected Yidden, and therefore it's allowed to be sold to them. Therefore here it's also brought in Shulchan Aruch that if when you're selling to Goyim weapons, it depends. If it's a case where you see that they're using it negatively, you're not allowed to sell. But if they're using it to protect, just like a government that's protecting, so then it's not a problem. Okay, going back to the Mishnah. In the Mishnah it said that you may not sell behema gasa, large animals. You may not sell to a guy, and the Gemara before brought the reasons for this. So it said agolim or syachim. You also shouldn't sell calves or syachim, which is a young donkey. Even though it's small, but it turns into a large animal. And Mishnah brought a machlokes. The Tanakama says it doesn't matter if it's shleimun or shvurim, whether it's a healthy animal, or even if it has a broken limb. You still not let it sell to a guy. But Rabbi Yehuda says, if it's a shvura, if it has a broken limb, you're allowed to sell to a guy. So Tanya and Abraisa, we learned, Rabbi Yehuda, mate b'shvura, Rabbi Yehuda says to sell an animal with a broken limb is allowed, because it can't heal, and to live. And therefore, what's the person going to do with this animal? He's going to shecht it. So he's not going to keep it in his possession. As we learned before, the point is, you're not allowed to sell these large animals to a guy because then he's going to work with it on Shabbos. And there's a gzeira, Chachamim said not to sell. But now, even if it can work, but you would think that, but if the guy will keep it in his possession, so then there's a problem of marasayin. Someone else sees that you sold your large animal to a guy, so it looks like that you sold a healthy animal. So Rabbi Yehuda says, no, it's not a problem, because what is he going to do with it? He's going to shecht it right away. So Amrullah, and this the Chachamim answered and argued, but Vahaloi, he won't necessarily shecht it. Marbian elev v'yeledes. The guy may use this animal, if it's a female, he may use it to bring a zachar and to cohabit in order that it should give birth. So since he's going to use it for this, to cohabit and for it to give birth, so then he's going to keep it in his possession. So this is marasayin. Someone will see that you sold this animal to a guy. So Amalahan, Rabbi Yehuda answered the Chachamim, Likishateilin. When this animal that has a broken limb will give birth, let me know. So the Gemara says what this means is Alma Lemekabel Zachar. What we see is that it's not makabel azachar, meaning even if physically it could give birth, as Taisus here says, it could physically give birth, but it's hard to cohabit it with a zachar, and therefore it usually will not give birth. So therefore the yid has no reason to keep this animal around. It's not going to work, it's not going to give birth, so he usually shechts it right away, so there's no problem to sell this large animal to a guy.
The guy's not going to keep it around.
The guy is not going to keep it around, yeah, he's going to shecht it right away. The last thing it said in the Mishnah, Ben Beseira, Matir Besus. Ben Beseira says, although you're not allowed to sell large animals to a guy, but you can sell a horse to a guy. So the Gemara explains, Tanya Ben Beseira, Matir Besus. The reason Ben Beseira said you're allowed to sell a horse, because what's done with a horse usually? Something that is not a Isser Malachim and Atayra to be Chayav Chatos. A horse is used for a person to ride on it. So as I mentioned, Rashi says in the Mishnah that Chai Noisa Esatzma, a human being, carries his own weight. So when the animal is carrying, the Chesus is carrying the person, it's not like carrying packages where there's a Chi of Chatos. And so therefore, the Gezeira of the Rabbanon doesn't apply over here.
What about if you put a buggy behind it?
Again, what?
A buggy or
that it could be drawing a wagon. Mechamer is something else, but it could be drawing a wagon. If that's an Isam and Atayra, could be. But the Gemara says that the horse,
It's not nice, it's the wagon.
Yeah, correct. It's not nice as Satzmai. Yeah, okay, what you're asking. But here the Gemara says that since it's usually made for a person to ride on the horse, so it's not a problem. Now, Rabbi Oyser, Rabbi though disagrees with Ben Beseira, and he says that you should not sell a horse to a guy. And there's two reasons for this. Echad mishum teiris kli zayin. One is because a horse, by a guy, he can use it as a weapon, which the Gemara will explain. And another reason actually is for the concern that we have regarding Shabbos, that you're not allowed to sell large animals because the guy will do work with it. And the Gemara will explain this right here. Let's see. It says the Gemara, Bishloime, Teiris Kli Zayin. When Rabbi says you shouldn't sell a horse because it can be used as a weapon, because Iked the Kotl B'schufe, because a horse sometimes is trained to kill with its legs. It
hooves.
With its hooves. Hooves. It bangs down a person with its hooves. So it's a problem. It's used as a weapon. What does it mean that he's saying that you can't sell the horse just like you can't sell any large animals that will be used on Shabbos? Why didn't we say that it's since a person rides on it? So that's not a real malacha, minatayre, so it's not a problem. So Rabbi Yechanan answers, what Rabbi meant is, what happens when a horse is old enough and it can't more be used to ride on it? So what is it used then for? What it's used for is, a person has a mill and the horse, he walks around and he makes the mill go around and around, so that's mamish a malacha minatayre, grinding on Shabbos. And so the horse that's sold to a guy will do this malacha. So here the gzeira of chachamim that you may come to rent it or lend it to a guy does apply. So this is a malacha min atayra. Batchina berachayim b'Shabbos. We'll do this on Shabbos. Amar Rav Yechanan halacha keben b'seira. We paskin like Ben Beseira that you're allowed to sell a horse to a guy. I already mentioned before when we learned the Gemara that Tosfos brings, and the Rishonim will bring that Bisman Hazeh, or even in the times of the Chachamim, later on, this Gzeira was in this battle, that there's all kinds of heterim why you could sell any animal to a guy. Hibayalu, another shaila was asked, Shor Shel Paton, an ox which was fattened, it was fed till it became a fat ox. Mahu, what's the halacha with this ox? Are you allowed to sell it to a guy or not? This fat ox basically cannot be used for any work. And the whole concern here is, you're selling a large animal that the guy will work with it on Shabbos. What's the story with this fat ox? Is there an issue of selling it to a guy or not? And the Gemara explains, Tiboyel Rabbi Yehuda. This is a shaila according to Rabbi Yehuda's opinion that says that if it has a broken leg, you're allowed to sell it to a guy. And Tiboyel Rabbanan. It's also a Yinibaya, according to the Rabbanan, that say that when it has a broken leg, you still may not sell it to a guy. And the Gemara explains, Tiboyel Rabbi Yehuda, it's an Abaya according to Rabbi Yehuda, because I could say, Atkan loy ka shari Rabbi Yehuda ela b'shvura. When does Rabbi Yehuda say that you can sell a large animal to a guy if it has a broken limb? Why? Because lo yasel l'chlam alacha. That's an animal that you know it can't work. As the Gemara brought before the Brayso, Rabbi Yehuda said, it's broken and it will not heal, and therefore the guy is going to shecht it. Aval hai, this ox that was fattened, if you just leave it, in other words, if you put this animal on a diet and it loses weight, so then I'll say l'chlam alacha. Then you will be able to use it for work. So you shouldn't sell it to a guy. You might end up using it for work. So the Gzeira of the Chachamim would apply here. So us, it's not allowed. That's the shaila according to Rabbi Yehuda. Oidilme, over here. Oidilme afil l'Rabbanon. So, or you could say, now here the Gemara explains the other side of the shaila, and this is even according to the Rabbanon. And the Rabbanon say that you may not sell an animal that has a broken limb. But over here, regarding this Shor Paton, you could sell it, and the Gemara explains, even according to the Rabbanon, loika asri hasam, the reason why the Chachamim say, by an animal that has a broken limb, that you shouldn't sell it to a guy, because Ella, distame lav l'shchita koi, because the Chachamim hold that an animal with a broken limb, a person doesn't usually shech this animal. Why is that? So Rashi says an animal with a broken limb is usually an animal that's very weak and not a very big fat animal. So that's not usually used to shech. When you shech, you want to have as much meat as possible, a fat animal. But this is an animal that has a broken limb, that's a very weak animal, so what is it usually used for? The Chachamim argued before that the person will try his luck to mate it with a zachar and that it should give birth. That's what he'll use it for. So therefore that should not be sold to a guy, because the guy is going to keep it in his possession. Aval hai, when you have a very fattened ox, the stamel l'shchita koi. Why was it fattened? Usually they fatten it in order to shecht it then right away, so you have a lot of meat. So afilu Rabbanan sharu, maybe over here, even the Rabbanan would allow to sell this to a guy. Okay, so the Gemara brings up Brayso, Toshama, the Amar of Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Oh, this is actually not a Brayso, but the Gemara brings a sort of an incident that happened, that shall base Rebbe, by the house of Rebbe, Hoyu Makrivin Shor Shel Patom B'Yom Edom. The students in the house of Rebbe, they would bring as a gift this fattened ox to the government or to the Caesar on the day of their holiday of the Avoda Zara. Right, so this was sort of like a tax or an obligation that they had. That they had no choice. They had to bring this fattened ox as a gift on the day of their Avoda Zara. And this was, Rashi says, this was a bezayin. This was something that was embarrassing, that the Talmidim of the Rebbe had to bring this gift on the day of their Avoda Zara. So Rebbe wanted to stop this minig. He didn't want them to have this obligation. So Chased Dalad Rivrivon, Rebbe spent and he paid them off with 40,000 coins, She'ema Krivin Oisayay, that they shouldn't have the obligation to bring it on the holiday of the Avoda Zara. El Lamacha, they could bring it the next day. Then he paid again, Chasadal Rivavon. He paid them off again another 40,000 coins, Shema Krivim Leisachai, that they don't have to bring this fattened ox when it's alive. El Shachat. They can bring it, the meat, once it's already slaughtered. And then Chasadal Rivavon, he paid again another 40,000 coins, Shema Krivim Leisachai, that they should be exempt, they shouldn't have to bring this at all. Okay, so now what do we see here? My time. When Rabbi paid them off, so it says that he paid them off, that they shouldn't have to bring it when it's alive, can bring it after it was slaughtered. Why was that important to Rabbi? So don't you think the reason is Mishum Dilma Asel Shehuye? That here you see, we're talking about a gift that was this fattened ox, but Rabbi did not want that they should give this live ox to the house of the government. Why? Because then you're giving a guy this large animal that's not allowed. And that's even if it's a sherpatam, even if it's a very fat ox, it's still not allowed. So therefore Rebbe paid them off that they should only give it after it's shechted. So that proves that it's still a problem. But the Gemara says, no, that's not, you can't necessarily prove anything from here. Why? Because according to your explanation, that this is what Rebbe was paying them off for. So this that Rebbe paid them off, that they should not have to bring it on the day of the Avoda Zara, on the holiday, but they should bring it the next day. My time, but what was the point of Rebbe doing that? What was the point of delaying it to the next day? What did he gain by that? What's the isser here? What's the problem here? Giving this share to a guy at any day is a problem because you're not allowed to sell or give a gift or guy a large animal. Ma'inaf gimin if it's on the day of the Avoda Zara or it's the next day. The Rishonim actually add that even though usually we had before in the Gemara, when you give it on the day of the holiday of the Avoda Zara, there's a concern that they're going to use it for their sacrifices for their Avoda Zara. But not in this case. We're talking about giving it as a gift to the government, which have enough animals that they're using for their Avoda Zara. So that's not the concern. So what was the point of Rebbe trying to delay this to the next day? So Ella, therefore the pshat here is different. Rebbe me'aker milse boy. Rebbe wanted to uproot this entire custom and this entire obligation that they have to pay this and give this as a gift to the government. So v'savar, so Rebbe thought, ye'aker v'asi porta porta. He's not going to be able to uproot this all at once. So he's going to do it little by little. So v'chimashile body. This is already a new question. So therefore what Rebbe did was, first he uprooted that you shouldn't have to give it on that day. Should be the next day, then not alive, and then not at all. So the fact that he did it this way was just to uproot it little by little, but it doesn't prove this point here that Rebbe specifically didn't want them to give a live animal or only a shechted animal because of the issur of giving a live animal to a guy. It was just a method of how Rebbe uprooted this minig, or this obligation they had little by little.
How do you deal with the guy should be careful?
Yeah, little by little. Yeah, very good. Okay, now the Gemara goes back to a point that already I explained before, but the Gemara here spells it out regarding this fattened ox. V'chimashi body, if you keep this animal and it's a big fat ox, v'avid me melacha, will it do any work for you? So in other words, the Gemara is asking that what's b'chlal over here, the whole discussion. That you have this fat ox and you could keep it and then it's going to do malacha. If you're going to keep it, is it going to do any work for you? Amar Ravashi, so Ravashi says, yes, Amali Zvida. Zvida told me, Rashi says Zvida was a person that he was a patom, he would fatten these oxen. He said, Bar Tura, this fat ox, Meshahinale, if you leave it, first you fatten it and it becomes a very strong, big ox, and then you leave it, you put it on a diet, Vavad al Chatrein. It could actually work as good as 2 oxen. So there is a reason to be concerned if you sell the guy this fat ox that he may then keep it and use it to work, because it can work very well. It can work like 2 oxen. Zakdeilige Mishnah, other halachas of what you're not allowed to sell to a guy. You may not sell a guy a bear or a lion or or anything else that can cause harm to the public. And here, as I mentioned, the Rishonim say the 2 reasons: either because lifnei iver, you're causing a guy to use these things to hurt people, so the guy is doing an isser, or so that shouldn't harm Yidden. They shouldn't use it again, turn it and use it against the Yidden themselves. Another thing, you're not allowed to assist a guy and build with them basilki. A basilki, as Rashi explains, is a tall tower that was used to judge people, that the government would give them chiv misa, capital punishment. They would take them up to a tall tower and then they would throw them off, or a garden, which is also a place of a court that was used to judge people for capital punishment. So you may not use it to build this with goyim, and because they could then use it against Yidden. They can judge Yidden there and kill Yidden there. Also at Stadia, you're not allowed to build, and at Stadia, which is some kind of a stadium that the Goyim built, that they have entertainment there, and the entertainment is also where they take oxen that have fights with human beings, and it can kill a person. What's it called?
They would feed Yidden to the lions.
Okay, that's something else. Rashi here says that this is this entertainment of people fighting with these oxen. And also a bima. A bima is like what we know. A bima is an elevated platform, which was also a place that they judged people and they threw them off this elevated platform. So all these things, you're not allowed to assist a guy in building it because it can be used to kill people and to kill a yid as well. Aval bainin imoim bimusiyos. You can build a bimusiyos, which is, as Rashi, according to Rashi's pshat, this is building an altar. Rashi here brings the koidenloi altar. If you look at Rashi, so you're building this mizbeach, which is made of like one large rock, and it's actually used for Avoda Zara. But Rashi here says when they bring their sacrifices on it, they don't bring it on the altar itself. It's put into another vessel, into a pan, and then it's put on the altar. So therefore, you're allowed to build it because it's not used directly for the Avoda Zara. That's Rashi. But Taisvis and other Rishonim disagree. Taisvis says, how could you say that you could assist a guy in building his altar that's used for Avoda Zara? And the heter is because you don't burn directly on the altar, but it's in another vessel. Taisvis says it can't be such a thing. And therefore Taisvis says that you have to be guided in the Mishnah, not bimusiyos, but with a dalet, dimusiyos, which is a kind of bathhouse. I mean, the Mishnah says right after this, a base merchetzais, which is also a bathhouse, but it's a different kind of bathhouse. That's according to Taisvis Pshat. The bathhouse here it's built. Rashi says it's built in the ground, and the water goes down in the ground, and that's a kind of bathhouse that you're allowed to build for a guy. Now higia lekippa. Even when they build bathhouses, but then they have this area where they build a dome, and there on the dome they build an image of an Avoda Zara, also live nice. That you're not allowed to assist a guy in building this. But otherwise, the bathhouse, you're allowed to help a guy and build it, and that's even if the bathhouse has certain things of Avoda Zara there, but it's made for a bathhouse. It's not made for Avoda Zara, so therefore you're allowed to assist a guy. Okay, so the Gemara begins with the halacha, a machlokes that will then come back to the Mishnah. Omer Rav Chanan bar Rav Chizda.
It would seem that the is that a yid is not allowed to get involved in the selling of any weapon to a goy.
Correct.
Push it.
Correct.
A gun deal or whatever it is, you know.
Yeah, that's So the Gemara before said depends. Okay, but it applies bisman hazeh. Omer Rav Chanan bar Rav Chizda. V'amri lo Omer Rav Chanan bar Rove Omer Rav. So Rav said chaya gasa. A large, not an animal, but a wild beast. A large wild beast. Harehike behema daka has the same halacha like a small animal, for example, a sheep or a goat, lepirkus, regarding the halacha of pirkus. What does the word pirkus mean? Pirkus means with the animal that shakes or has like a spasm after you shecht it. What does this mean? So Rashi explains, what happens if you shecht an animal that you know was about to die? So the question is, when you shechted it, did it die because of the shechita, or did it really die before? How are you going to know? So the answer is, if after you shecht it, you have to see the spasm of the animal. How did it die on its own, or did it die from the shechita? So if the halacha by the small animals is, if you see when it shakes around, that it stretches out its limbs and it stretches out and contracts, both. You see both movements, that's an indication that it died from the shechita. But if, as soon as you shecht it, it just stretches out its limbs and it doesn't go back. So it didn't go both directions. So then you know that it really died from before the shechita. That's the halacha by behemoth daka. Now by behemoth gasa, that does not apply. Behemoth gasa, which b'chlal, the movements of a behemoth gasa are less extreme. So by behemoth gasa, even if it just stretches out its limbs after you shecht it, it's not a simon that it died before the shechita. So here, Rav said regarding the chaya gasa, regarding large beasts, it moves similar in nature to the behemoth daka, and therefore after you shechted the pirkus, the spasm has to be the same, that has to move back and forth, and only then is it a sign that it died from the shechita. Okay, that's the halacha of pirkus.
What chaya are we shechting?
What chaya? A deer.
A deer.
A deer is a chaya. Yeah. I don't know if there's any other chaya that you could shecht. Yeah. Avaloi lemechira.
Giraffe.
I don't know if that's a chaya. I'm not sure if it's a chaya. Avaloi lemechira. Oh, well here's what's negate to what we're talking about. The chaya gasa does not have the halacha of a behemoth gasa, or behemoth daka, that is. It doesn't have the halacha of a behemoth daka when it comes to selling. Now, what's the halacha of the behemoth daka when it comes to selling? So this is going back to the Mishnah before, that when it comes to the behemoth daka, so that which is not used for work, so you're allowed to sell it to a guy. In a place where there's a minig that you could sell it, so you could sell it to a guy. By a behemoth gasa, which works, that's not allowed to be sold to a guy. So what Rav is saying is, this chaya gasa has the halacha of a behema gasa that could do work and therefore cannot be sold to a guy. It does not have the halacha of a behema daka, where if the minig is that you're allowed to sell it to the guy. This is what was said in the name of Rav. But then va'ani oimer, but Rav Chanan said, but I say, af lemechire, even when it comes to selling a large wild beast to a guy, it has the halacha like a behema daka, because it's not really designated for work. The problem of selling the behema gasa to the guy is because he's going to work with it on Shabbos. But this chaya will not be working on Shabbos. And therefore, makim shenog limkar, in a place where the minig is to sell it, moichrin, you can sell it to a guy. Shalai limkar, in a place where the minig was not to sell it, the Gemara brought before because of revia, the concern of the guy having a relation with this animal, then moichrin, you cannot sell it to the guy. Okay, so the Gemara is going to focus on this detail regarding selling a chaya to a guy. Is there a problem with this? So Tanah, what did it say in the Mishnah? You can't sell a beer, a lion to a guy, and not anything that can harm the public. So what do you see here? Here we're talking about a chaya gasa, large animals. So what did it say in the Mishnah? Time it is the reason you can't sell to a guy is because this can cause harm. So that would mean that if it's other large animals that are not dangerous, they're not going to harm anybody. So even, let's say, these animals themselves, or these wild beasts themselves, you take a lion, and it's sort of domesticated. It's not a wild lion. So this lion itself, if it's not causing a nezek to Rabim, shari, you're allowed to sell it to a guy. So this proves the point that Rav Chanan said that these large wild beasts are allowed to be sold to a guy. It's a question on Rav that said that it's not allowed to be sold. Omar Rabba Bar Ula, so Rabba Bar Ula says, Ba'ari Shover. The Mishnah here, when it's talking about a lion that has a broken limb, and therefore selling it to a guy is not going to be a problem. Va'aliba de Rabbi Yehuda, and the Mishnah is following the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that says that if it has a broken limb, so then it's not going to be a problem to sell it to a guy. Right? So the only problem with this lion is if it's dangerous and it could attack someone. But otherwise, if it can't attack anybody, it's not going to be a problem to sell it because it's an Ari Shavor and therefore it can't do any work. So there's no problem to sell it to a guy. But if it would not be an Ari Shavor, if it's a lion that is domesticated and it does not have a broken limb, so then you could still say like Rav that it's a problem to sell it to a guy because the guy could work with it. Rav Ashi says another answer. There's no question from our Mishnah on what Rav said because Stam Ari Shavorhu Eitzim Alocha. That Rav said is halacha, you may not sell a beast to a guy because you can use it for work, but that doesn't apply to a lion. Any lion is like an animal with a broken limb that cannot be used for work because a lion cannot be used for work. No such a thing. Lion does not do any work. So therefore, regarding a lion, it's like an Ari Shover, and therefore, according to Rashi's Pshat, the Gemara is saying that our Mishnah is going like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that with a broken limb, it's allowed to be sold. So every lion is like an animal with a broken limb, and therefore it could be sold to a guy. But according to the Chachamim, this lion, even if it can't do work, it still may not be sold to a guy. That's what Rashi holds. Other Rishonim disagree, but that's Rashi's pshat. Okay, well, now the Gemara asks from a clear brisa that says clearly like Rav. Meisvei, the brisa says, Kishem she'ei moichrolem behem gasa, just like you're not allowed to sell a guy a large animal that does work and can work on Shabbos. You can't sell them a large beast as well. Even in a place where you could sell small animals, but you can't sell large chayas to a guy. So to Yufta the Rav Chanan Barove, this refutes what Rav Chanan Barove said. To Yufta, this refutes his opinion. It's a clear refutation. Okay, so the Gemara here brings now the same exact discussion that we had here, but it just brings it in just a little bit of a different version. Ravina Rami Masnisna Braisa. Ravina brought the same discussion, but he brought it as a question that it was asked as a contradiction from the Mishnah on the Braisa. Mishani, and he gave the same answers that the Gemara gave before. Because Tanan in the Mishnah it says, you can't sell a guy, a bear, a lion, or anything that causes harm. And from the Mishnah we see, time it is beinezek. The only reason you may not sell this to a guy is because it can cause harm. Less beinezek, but if it's domesticated and it will not cause any harm, even though it's large chayis, you may sell to a guy. That's the Mishnah. And Ramini, on this, the question was asked from the Bryce that we just quoted, that it says, "Kishem she'ei moichren behema gasa." Just like you may not sell a large behema, kachem moichren chaya gasa, you may not sell a large chaya as well. V'afilu b'moichren she'moichren behema daka. Even in a place where you sell small animals to a guy, but chaya gasa ei moichren, you may not sell a large animal to a guy, and that's even if it does not cause any harm. That's a clear contradiction to what the Mishnah said, that it's only not allowed if it can harm someone. Mishani, and the answer was given, the two answers the Gemara said before, Ba'ari Shavar, Ba'liba de Rabbi Yehuda, that our Mishnah is speaking about a lion that has a broken limb, and that's like Rabbi Yehuda's opinion that it's allowed. And Rav Ashi Amma, as we said before, Rav Ashi answered, Stam Ari Shavaru Eitzel Malacha. A lion cannot do any work, and therefore you always may sell a lion to a guy if it's not a lion that's wild, if it's not a lion that's going to harm someone. Yeah, the same discussion that we had before.
If it's in nezek, I feel like I tell you not to sell.
Not why?
It makes nezek. If it causes nezek.
No, it doesn't say so. If to sell to a yid, it doesn't say it.
Why wouldn't we buy one of these broken Ari that has a broken? Why wouldn't we buy it?
You could use them for a
What are you gonna do with
circus.
it?
I'm not sure yet. For a circus, maybe. Yeah. Okay. No.
So,
Maskef Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman asked a question on this. Man leimelon the Ari chaya gasihi. Chlalis asks on the whole thing over here. The Gemara is asking from the Mishnah regarding a lion, assuming that the lion falls into the category of a large chaya. So he asked, who says a lion is in the category of a large chaya? Dilme chaya daki. Maybe it's considered to be a chaya, but it's for smaller animals. And therefore, it's not a question on what we're discussing over here, the machlokes of Rav and of Chanan, whether you could sell large animals to a guy. Minari is considered to be the melech of the chayes, but it's not like a big buffalo or some big, other elephant. The chveisvos are large animals. Maybe it's considered to be a smaller animal. So therefore, he says it's not a question, b'chlal.
well, an elephant would be taka behema gasa.
Yeah.
They're very easy to train.
Yeah, okay.
So they're not.
Okay. Rav Ashi, now here the Gemara brings the way Rav Ashi asked the question from the Mishnah. He also asked on Rav Chanan, and this proved the opinion of Rav Chanan that we brought before. Again, Rav Chanan held that it's like a behema daka, and you're allowed to sell a large chaya to a guy. So Rav Ashi daik masnissen. Rav Ashi was medayik from what it said in the Mishnah, u'maisiv to yufta, and he refuted the opinion of Rav Chanan. Because Tanan, the Mishnah says, you can't sell these animals or these chayas that cause harm for the public. So what do we see from the Mishnah? The reason why you can't sell it to a guy is because of the harm that it causes. But if there's no harm, then you could sell to a guy. Now, and the reason why you're allowed to sell to a guy if it does not cause harm is because it's a lion. And the same a bear. The Mishnah mentioned the bear, lion, because a lion and a bear is never doing work for you. Even if it's domesticated and it's not wild, it doesn't do work for a person. So therefore, that's the diak of the Mishnah, that you could sell it to a guy if it doesn't do work. Because shavru eitz malach, it doesn't do work. But if it's any other large chaya that will not cause harm and it could do work, the avid malacha, so then you can't sell it to a guy. So to Yufta de Rav Chanan bar Ave, so what it says in our Mishnah refutes what Rav Chanan bar Ave said to Yufta. So this refutes what Rav Chanan bar Ave said. Okay, so the Kitzur, the Gemara over here, refuted Rav Chanan bar Ave's opinion, either from a clear Braisa, or according to Rav Ashi, he was medayik from the Mishnah as well, that we paskin like Rav, that you can't sell large chayas to a guy, because it could do work, and therefore on Shabbos it'll do work as well. Now, so the Gemara now explains, the chaya gasemi is my malacha of this. So now explain, if you're selling a large beast to a guy, what kind of a work does it do? I mean, regarding a lion and a bear, the Gemara says it doesn't do work. But other large animals, what kind of work could it do? Amar Abaye, so Abaye said, Amali Mar Yehuda. Mar Yehuda said to me that the Bey Mar Yecheni, that by this individual by the name of Mar Yecheni, Tochtni Rechaim, they use to activate a mill to grind. How? Be'aroidi, with a wild donkey, which is not a behemoth, it's a chaya. And it's used to do this work of getting the mill to go around to do the grinding. So you see that even a chaya could be used for work. Amar Rav Zera said, Kavina Beirav Yehuda, when we were by Rav Yehuda, Amalon, he told us, Gemire minoi ha milse. You should learn from me this halacha that we're talking about over here, and this is actually going back to the halacha that the Gemara started with regarding the halacha of pirkus. That when you shecht a chaya gasa, that in order to see that it died from the shchita and not from before, you have to see that it shakes around, has a spasm similar to a small behemoth. So this halacha you should learn from me, because the Megaber Rabbi Shmieli, I heard it from a great person. Now, who is the great person that he heard it from? I don't remember. I'm not sure. Rav, Shmuel, whether I heard this halacha from Rav or I heard it from Shmuel. And this is this halacha that we're talking about. Chaya gasa arei ki behemoth daka. It has the same halacha like a small animal, the pirkus, regarding this halacha of pirkus to see how it died after the shchita. So he didn't know if Rav said it or Shmuel said it. Now, when he came to the city Korkania, so Ashkachtel Rav Chia bar Ashi, the Yosef V'Kama, so he found Rav Chia bar Ashi that was teaching this halacha, and V'Kama Mishmei de Shmuel, and he taught it in the name of Shmuel. Chaya Gasa Arei Kebehem Daka Lepirkus. So Amina, after he heard that he taught this halacha in the name of Shmuel, so he said Shma Mino Mishmei de Shmuel Itmer. So that proves that he heard it from Shmuel. Then Kiasoi L'Sura. Another time when he came to Surah, so Ashkachtel Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah, the Yosef, he found Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah that was sitting, and the Ka'amal Mishmei de Rav, and Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah was saying in the name of Rav, Chaya Gasa Harei Kibei Medaka Lepirkus. This halacha that has that the Chaya Gasa is like the Behei Medaka for Pirkus. So then he said, Shma Mina Itme Mishmei de Rav. I see now that Rav is the one that said this, and also Vitme Mishmei de Shmuel. Both Rav and Shmuel both said the same halacha. And then Kislikis Lahasam. So Rav Yehuda, when he went to Eretz Yisrael, or maybe it means when Rav Zera went to Eretz Yisrael. It always says in the Gemara that Rav Zera went up to Eretz Yisrael. So Ashkachtel Rav Asi. So he found Rav Asi, the Yosef Ka'amar, and he was saying over this halacha. And whose name did he say the halacha? He said Amar Rav Chama Bar Gurya Mishmei de Rav. Rav Chama Bar Gurya said in the name of Rav, El Chaya Gasa Harei Kebei Medaka Lepirkus. So Amri Lei, so I said to him, why are you saying that Rav Chama Bar Gurya said it in the name of Rav? V'lei Sover Lo Mar the man Mara Deshmaita Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah. Do you not hold of what I heard when I was in Surah? I heard that someone else said it in the name of Rav. Who said it in the name of Rav? Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah said it in the name of Rav, not Rav Chama Bar Gurya. So Amalei, so Rav Asi said to him, Pasya Ochme, black vessel. This is an expression that the Gemara uses in a few places when the Chachamim would speak to each other. The reason they use this term of a black vessel is because the Chachamim were great Talmidei Chachamim, but in their garments, the way they dressed, they weren't necessarily dressed with the most beautiful clothing. So they were dressed in clothing that was like, wasn't so clean necessarily, so therefore he referred to him as a Pasya Ochme, like a black vessel. From me and from you, we can learn the halacha. So meaning, you heard it in the name of Rabbi, who is it again? You heard it in the name of Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah. I heard it that it was said in the name of Rav Chama Bar Gurya. They both said it in the name of Rav, and it's both true. Amar Rav Zera, Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah, Amar Rav, and Chama Bar Gurya, Amar Rav, and Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah. Said it. So again, Rav Zera says that Rav Asi said, and the name of that Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah is the one that said it in the name of Rav, and Chama Bar Gurya said it in the name of Rav. They both heard it. They both heard it from Rav that Chaya Gasa Harehi Kibei Medaka Lepirkus. This halacha that the large Chaya has the same halacha as the small animal regarding this halacha of Pirkus. Okay, such a big arichas over here in the Gemara just to figure out what's the source of who said this halacha. Okay, let's learn one more small piece here. It said in the Mishnah, "Ein bainin cholo." You may not build various different places that are used for killing a person by goyim in a court case. So Amar Rabba Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yechanan. So he said the name of Rabbi Yechanan. So the first thing that was mentioned in the Mishnah was this high place that's called a basilki. That Gimel Bisilkai is saying there are three different kinds of Bisilkais, these towers. One was built for Goyish kings. Basilica, that's
Basilica, it's a term used in France.
Okay.
That the tower over there.
Okay. Vishal Machatzais, Another one was there was a bathhouse that was built in it, and Mishal Eitzris. Another one was used as a treasure house. So Amar Rava said about this, or Rabbe, Beis Leheter, two of them you're allowed to assist a guy to build because it's not used to kill anybody, to throw someone off and kill him from there, and Vechad Leser. And one of them is not allowed. V'simin, and a simin to know which one is Aser, Leser Malchayim Bezikim, the one that they built for the kings, that's built for the king to kill someone from it, that's the one that's not allowed to be built. Another opinion is Omar Rava or Omar Rabbe, Kulan Leheter. All these three that are mentioned here, they're all allowed. You can build all of them for a guy. Even the one that's built for the king, you're allowed to build this. In the Mishnah it said, Ein Bainin Imoen Bisilki. It says you shouldn't build this Bisilki. And then it said Gardum, also not a Gardum. And it's Tadye, Ubime. So Bisilki is one of them that may not be built. And Rabbi says you can build any kind of Bisilki for a guy. And says the Gemara that according to him, Amen. You have to read the Mishnah. When it said Basilki, it's not a separate thing. What it's saying is Basilki shel gardum v'shel itztadya v'shel bima. The Basilki is a general term referring to a high tower or a high place. And it's saying, what kind of a high place should you not build if it's a gardum, which is a courthouse that they throw a person off of it, or the itztadya or the bima, that's what may not be built. But the other Basilkis that are mentioned there, these tall places, all these three are allowed to be built.
Sure.